The longest shutdown in American history has come to an end, with many on either side of the aisle calling it a cave-in. Meanwhile, nearly 1 million federal workers and contractors continue to feel the effects. New numbers issued by the CBO today show that there was an initial economic loss of $11 billion. But once the workers get their back pay, the net loss will arrive at about $3 billion. So joining us now to break down all these numbers, Emeritus Professor of Economics at UMass Amherst, Richard Wolff. Professor, thanks for being with us today. So first, to help us understand these numbers from the CBO, they arrived at a net loss to the economy of about $3 billion. Where is that money lost?
Well, it's lost in a number of ways, but even before getting into it, the estimates are all over the place. One that many of us rely on more is from the rating agency Standard & Poor's, because they really have to know what's going on in a way that the CBO does not. And their estimate is $6 billion. So we're not even close between the 3 and the 6. Here's the real problem. We don't know what the costs are because the costs lie in the future. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Environmental Protection Agency, some of its people weren't doing much protecting. We don't know what the damage to the environment is from having a month with either less or no guardianship as they're supposed to do. Likewise, we know about the airline cancellations that happened because the folks at the airports were either not working or calling in sick or working under duress, and we don't know how many meetings were missed, how many investments were postponed. So the real cost of breaking down the government is enormous and won't be known for months or even years.
All good points there, Professor. And a lot of workers have really been impacted in more permanent ways, more tangible ways, such as people losing their health care or even the roofs over their heads. This sentiment seemed kind of lost on Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross. His comments on not understanding why folks were at food pantries or why they can't just take out loans was extremely tone deaf. Explain to us what Mr. Ross seems to have missed.
Well, let me give you an example from my own life. I'm a professor. I have students come to see me all the time. Here's one of many stories. My mother called me up, the student says. She said, "Our father is out of work and not getting paid. He's a government employee. But the bill from the university has to be paid. What are we going to do? We don't have the money." We know from research that a huge proportion of the American people don't have $400 to $1,000 for an emergency expense. We just put 800,000 of those people into an impossible situation. They're going to have to dip into savings or borrow more money. That will cost them a lot of interest into the months and years ahead. The disrespect to 800,000 families in this country who do the work they're asked to do and who deserve to be paid, Mr. Ross seems not to understand that you can't burden them with borrowing money on top of abusing them by not paying them for the job they've been doing. It's extraordinary.
And Professor, no matter what side of the aisle anybody is on, this shutdown essentially, effectively used nearly 1 million people as pawns or as negotiating tools. Who's to say that come February 15th that this won't happen again?
No one is to say it. If anyone says it, they shouldn't be taken seriously. Mr. Trump has staked his presidency on a number of promises. We've lost the one about Mexico paying. We've lost a number of the other ones. And now we're supposed to believe he's going to cave a second time. Here's my best guess, and it comes from reliable sources. He will throw it into the courts by using some sort of executive power to order the wall, looking all tough and presidential, and then he can explain it or excuse himself by saying it was the Supreme Court who told him he couldn't do it, or some congressional action that blocked him, so he can appeal to his base as if he were trying. And then the great deal maker will have to put his tail between his legs and admit he couldn't make a deal even after doing this damage to 1 million public employees. It's an extraordinary moment in American history.
And Professor, last thing is, if you had a word of advice for the president's cabinet or the president himself, where do we go from here? What would you tell him to do?
Well, there's a lesson here And one of them is, don't make promises when you're running for president that may sound good in a soundbite, but are disastrous as policy, unworkable without splitting the country into half. Neither the wall nor the $5.5 billion he asked for are worth the damage you've done. It shows a political system completely out of touch with the realities it's supposed to be managing.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Professor Richard Wolff, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.